Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Richard Carranza, a 1991 graduate of the University of Arizona, who is now the man in charge when it comes to education in New York City. So certainly a big deal. And Richard, we are so glad to have you today. Thank you for joining us.
Sarah, thanks for the opportunity, and it's good to connect with you.
Yes, absolutely. Now, let's start with the basics for those of us who don't work in education. Your formal title is Chancellor of the New York City Department of Education. What does that mean? What do you do?
I'm trying to figure that out, all kidding aside. So New York City is the largest school system in America, 1.1 million students. We have 1,800 schools, 152,000 employees.
Wow.
So within our system, in all 5 boroughs, we have 42 local community education districts that each have a superintendent. So I'm in charge of all of that. So that's why I'm the chancellor and not the superintendent. But it's akin to being the superintendent of any other school system. You're the CEO of the school system.
Okay, so since you've got the largest school system in America, is it fair to say that you've got the biggest job in public education as far as K through 12 goes?
Well, I'll leave that to others. I'll just say that when we sneeze, the K-12 community in America gets a cold. We're always very cognizant of that. On any given day that we're in session, 1 out of 300 Americans is sitting in one of our classrooms. That's how big we are. So we're very cognizant of the fact that what we do does have an impact in terms of what's happening across the country.
Okay, we will get back to that in just a minute. But first, I want to take us back to the beginning, take us back to your time at the University of Arizona. Grew up in Tucson, went to the U of A, and you didn't start out studying education, though. You started out studying engineering. So take me through how you discovered your love of education and what inspired you to make that shift.
Well, local boy. Like you said, grew up born and raised in Tucson. I have a twin brother, Ruben Carranza, who was ASUA student body president. I'm very proud of him for that. But we both went to the University of Arizona. And yes, when I graduated from high school in 1984, everyone was talking about it. There was the era where people were graduating with social science degrees and driving cabs or working in grocery stores. And everybody was saying, if you want to have a job, you have to go into engineering. We're hiring engineers like crazy. So I went into engineering, and let's just say it wasn't my cup of tea. And through a lot of reflection, I came to understand that what I really liked doing, number one, is I was a real people person. People just really brought me lots of energy. But I was giving guitar lessons. I'm a lifelong mariachi musician, worked my way through college, gigging. And I was giving guitar lessons to kids. And I found myself preferring to go give the guitar lesson than go to the science library and work on my project for my engineering class. And I thought, what I really love doing is teaching. So almost 2 years in, I did a complete turnaround and decided I'm going to become a teacher, and the rest is history.
That is so great. Now you graduate from the University of Arizona, you start teaching, starting out in Tucson, but then you make a shift from teaching to administration. And can you walk us through why you made that shift?
Sure. So I did something that not many people get a chance to do. I graduated from Pueblo High School in Tucson, and I went back and taught at Pueblo High School, which was great because I could say to kids, look, if I can do it, you can do it. Yeah. So spent a decade in the classroom, loved what I was doing. But while I was there, as a teacher, I was a bilingual social studies teacher, and I loved teaching. But I also started a youth mariachi program at Pueblo High School, Mariachi Aslan de Pueblo. They're still around to this day. They're doing great work under their director, John Contreras, who, by the way, was one of my guitar students when I was teaching in college. So life is full circle. To answer your question, as I was building that mariachi program, I found myself having so much pushback from some unexpected corners and some expected corners. Very very much, I would say, uninformed opinions about whether mariachi programs should be in schools or not. And my program was thriving. And I found myself saying, either I have to stop complaining about how unenlightened these people are, or I have to do something about it. And it's when I decided to get my graduate degree in administration. And I decided if I'm going to do something, I want to have a little more authority other than just my classroom. So that's when I decided I'd go into administration, and started off as an assistant superintendent and worked my way into being principal at Pueblo High School. Again, a dream come true. And the work that we were doing got noticed, and I got recruited to Las Vegas to be a high school principal there, and then a region soup, and then a deputy soup in San Francisco. The rest just kind of took a life of its own. But that's what drove me to become an administrator, is that I wanted to have more of a direct impact on the policies and systems that were negatively impacting the students that I had in my classroom every day. And the way to do it was to become an administrator.
Now, on that note, you have in your Twitter bio, I want to make sure I get this right, you are committed to equity and excellence for all. So what does that mean to you, and how does that commitment show up in the decisions that you make?
In June, we not only were dealing with the viral pandemic, but we're dealing with an economic pandemic, and we're now dealing with the racial pandemic. It's gone across the world, the image of George Floyd, and it's led to some very deep conversations about inequities that exist in systems and public entities, education being one of those. So education systems haven't always served all of our students with disabilities, students that are English language learners, just to name a few. So I've been committed to equity from the minute I walked into a classroom as a teacher. And as a leader, I often tell people that I'm not going to be so busy trying to keep my job that I'm not going to do my job. And doing my job means breaking down those systems and structures that are inequitable for the very communities that we serve. And moving into this role of being a chancellor or a superintendent, we now have direct impact on being able to take on those systems and structures and practices that are not serving all students. What I have found, and why I say not too busy keeping my job and I'm not going to do my job, is that it's a road much easier traveled if you don't take on those systems and structures, because then you're getting along and people, it's not controversial. I've never taken that road, because the only reason I am in a chancellor's role or in a superintendent's role and not in the classroom, because the classroom is still my first love, is because I want to take on those challenges. So for me, that's what the role is. It's about making sure that we can transform systems to serve all of our students.
Well, you mentioned the pandemic, obviously, that's really dominated all of our lives. How have the last 4 months challenged you? Because you've worked all across the country in all kinds of roles for nearly 30 years now, but have never seen something quite like this pandemic. What have you learned in the last 4 months?
Well, I've learned that communities are exceptionally resilient. If you treat them with the respect that they deserve, which means keeping constant communication, being attendant to those things that are beyond just the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. I thought, Sarah, that I had the most difficult experience of my career when I served as superintendent in Houston, the Houston Independent School District, and we had Hurricane Harvey, still to this day the most destructive hurricane in the continental United States. So I thought that was going to be the most difficult time. Wasn't even close. It was just warming us up for COVID-19. So what I've learned is that, again, you have to be nimble, you have to be flexible. For us in New York City, let me give you some examples of what that means. So when it became very apparent in March that New York City was literally the epicenter of the epicenter, New York State, in terms of the community spread of COVID-19, and that we were going to have to close in-person instruction, shut down schools, but continue schooling. In a matter of 4 days, we pivoted the entire system, largest system in America, from an in-person learning environment to a remote learning environment. So that means in 4 days, we had to get teachers trained. We had to get devices in teachers' hands and students' hands. So students walked out of their schools for the last day with about 175,000 devices in their hands that were school devices. They're taking them home now because they're going to learn at home. But we still had about 300,000 students that didn't have devices. So we worked very diligently. Within 2 months, we had shipped 300,000 Wi-Fi enabled devices. We had negotiated a contract with Apple to be able to produce them. We had negotiated with internet companies to provide free internet access to all of our students, especially our students in temporary housing or housing projects. We were able to stand up over 550 remote meal hubs, because we know that students, many of our students, over 82% of our students are free and reduced lunch eligible in New York City. So they get their food at school. So we stood up these meal hubs and we served students in over 550 remote hubs across the entire city of New York in all 5 boroughs. We then increased that to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They could come and grab it. And then we said, not just students, anybody can do it. So to date is right now, middle of July, we've now served over 42 million meals to the citizens of New York City as part of our effort. We also knew that there were first responders, medical personnel, essential workers that even while we were in a stay-at-home situation, they needed to work to keep the city moving. So we created something called regional enrichment centers, where we staffed 52 of these across all 5 boroughs, specifically for the children of first responders, medical personnel, essential workers. And we literally had school for them so that their parents could continue to work and serve our city. I'm really proud of the work that our organization has done. We continue to work in that vein, in that regard. So the learnings that we've had is that you have to be flexible, you have to be attendant to the needs of your community, but you always have to be forward-looking. So we are very focused on what in-person learning will look like in the fall. We come back to school in September, and we're very much planning for what that's going to look like, but also being very sober-minded about if anything changes, we have to continue in a blended learning environment, we're going to be ready to do that as well.
Now, you just mentioned looking ahead to the fall when you guys get started in September. At this point in the summer, what do you think school will look like in New York City this fall?
Well, regardless of what happens with COVID-19, and we know that during the summer we've seen states really start to spike. My beloved hometown of Tucson in state of Arizona, has become the epicenter of outbreak. So we know that this virus ebbs and flows. So what we know for sure is that regardless of what the in-person learning looks like in the fall, there will be a modicum of blended learning. Because we also know, we've surveyed our families, and we know that there are families that have said to us, we just don't feel comfortable with our children being in an in-person learning environment unless there's a vaccine. We know that there are adults that for various reasons, including they may have underlying medical conditions or pre-existing conditions, cannot be in large groups of people. So there will be blended learning that will be continuing in the fall. As we are doing our analysis around social distancing requirements, safety requirements, we know that we just don't have the capacity to serve all of our students on any given day, given the spacing requirements and safety requirements we have. So there's going to be it's not going to be what school was before we went to lockdown. It's going to be very different. And so we're trying to prepare for those eventualities as we go forward.
Now, you mentioned earlier that when you sneeze, the whole country notices, that kind of thing. So I want to get back to that for a second. What kind of pressure do you feel in this job, be it during the pandemic or even pre-pandemic, knowing that all eyes are on you guys in this job?
It's sometimes it's a little surreal. I'm a kid from the south side of Tucson, Arizona. My dad was a journeyman sheet metal worker. My mom was a hairstylist, a beautician. So I'm just a kid from Tucson and proud of that. But to all of a sudden see your name, when you go on to Google and first thing that pops up is your name and an article, and to have 13 education reporters in New York City reporting on everything you do, everything you say, sometimes is a little, it's a little weird. But I think for me personally, the values and the morals and what I've been very much aligned to from the minute I walked into a classroom as a teacher haven't changed from when I was a teacher at Pueblo High School to now chancellor in New York City. So I don't have to worry about what I said 2 years ago or what I did 2 years ago or what I was championing when I was superintendent in San Francisco or Houston, because it is exactly the same agenda that I have now. Really about equity, excellence, and really making sure that our systems and structures are serving all of our students. And I have to tell you, I had a great grounding for understanding that with my education at the University of Arizona in the College of Education. I had a great pedigree of professors that really talked and taught from that point of view, that it's not just a job, it's not just a profession, it's a calling. So I feel very fortunate in many regards that I get to do what I do, but it's really been predicated upon having, I think, the training and some really good mentors that have helped me stay the course.
Well, there are a lot of people, be it in your school system or, as we mentioned, nationwide, who are looking to you to lead right now, to make decisions, to set precedent. How are you taking time for yourself to unwind? Because I imagine in the last 4 months, it's been a little bit stressful.
Well, the good thing is that I do three things. Number one is I exercise every day. I've really gotten into running. So I go out for a run. I live not too far from a park where I'm able to social distance and be able to run. So I do that, which really is helpful. The second thing is I've been trying to recreate my mother's recipes. So I've been getting into cooking and really trying to flex that cooking muscle, a lot of Sonoran recipes. And that's been just very enjoyable for me as well. And then the third thing is I've really been playing a lot of guitar and guitarrón and just playing my music. That's really been, for me, an outlet, a creative outlet. So those three things have been what helped me to de-stress in a very stressful environment during a very stressful time.
You pulled off an incredible feat at the end of June. You got Jennifer Lopez, Alex Rodriguez, several other celebrities in the New York area to participate in a graduation celebration for New York City schools. So I want to know how you came up with that idea and how you pulled it off.
Well, as you know, as Mayor de Blasio and I were talking about, how are we ending the school year? And it became obvious that we were going to end the school year in remote learning mode. It just naturally became, we should do a citywide graduation to honor all of our graduates. And if there are luminaries that have graduated from any school system in America, they are from New York City. So we got to work trying to figure out how can we do something that we can celebrate for all of our seniors and make it special for them. So that's where the idea came forward that we would do a virtual graduation and we would invite as many stars as possible. And we started putting that together, and it just so happened that one evening when I was having dinner with Jennifer Lopez and Alex at their house, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Oh, my friends, J-Lo and A-Rod?
Just joking. But basically, I just want to thank them because it was we reached out to their representatives. We talked about what we were trying to do. And they said, not only do we want to participate, can we be the keynote speakers? And they're fantastic. And their message was right on point. We also had Lin-Manuel Miranda that said yes. We had Pitbull that said yes. We had a lot of people just thanking our seniors. And what I loved best about that was we partnered with a local TV station that live streamed it. And I hope that our seniors felt as special as they really are. It was a really good night.
Well, as a leader in the education space in the United States, I'm curious to know what your vision is for education in the next 5 to 10 years. Is there something specific you hope to change or hope to achieve in the space of education?
Well, this is a great opportunity. We all, the greater education community, not only in the United States, but across the world, have had to adapt to a different way of learning and teaching. So the normal prior to COVID-19 can never be the new normal post-COVID-19. We've built a lot of capacity. In New York City, we've almost, in 2 months, single-handedly bridged the technology gap for our students, something that we've all wanted to take on, but there was never enough budget, there was never enough whatever to do it. We've now done that. teachers that are now teaching in a much more personalized way than ever before. And let me be clear, we're never going to replace a caring, well-trained teacher in the classroom with students, but our teachers in this environment have had to develop new capabilities to personalize instruction to a greater degree. That's capacity that we need to build upon as we go into the post-COVID environment. In these last months that all of us have been at home and not in-person learning, we haven't had one teacher negatively evaluated based on a punitive evaluation system. Think about that. We used to think evaluation was the end-all be-all. We haven't had one student suspended or expelled from school. Think about that. We haven't penalized one student for their attendance. Think about that. We've paid attention to mental, social, emotional well-being of adults and children. We've taken a trauma-informed approach to not only pedagogy, but to curriculum. Think about that. We've developed new platforms where parents can access information, access curriculum guidance, can access additional support and tutoring. Think about the power of that. So all of these things we've done within the context of a pandemic, but this is great practice and practices that we absolutely need to build upon as we go into a post-COVID-19. That's where I'm focused. That's where I'm focused on never going back to those punitive, I would say, 19th century practices, but truly evolving our practice to a 21st, 22nd century reality, because the reality also is that our students are already way ahead of us. So this is a great opportunity to really build a future educational system that truly serves all of our students.
Well, Richard, it sounds like New York City and the country are in fantastic hands with you leading the way. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the hard work you are putting in to make this country a better place.
Thank you, Sarah, and please remember, bear down.